After my wife's death in an accident, my sister invited me to her son's birthday. But when I arrived at the party, she publicly announced that the baby was my wife's and that she needed half of her $50 million inheritance. I asked, "Are you serious?" When she said yes, I couldn't control my laugh because my wife was. Life can change in a second. 1 minute I was 33, happily married and planning my future. The next minute I was a widower staring at cremation options because my wife's body was too damaged for an open casket. That's what happened to me, Jason. 7 months ago my wife Amanda died in a terrible car crash. Since then I've been drowning in sorrow and trying to figure out how to live in this new painful life. The first few weeks felt like a blur. I was busy with funeral plans, getting so many calls and sleepless nights. If my parents hadn't taken over most of the arrangements, I don't know how I would have managed it. Jason dear, we've coordinated everything with the funeral home, my mom said softly, gentler than I'd ever heard her speak. You just focus on yourself right now. A support group for those who lost their loved ones became my safe haven. Every Friday evening I sat in a circle with others who understood the deep ache in my chest. Some days hit harder than others. I said in one meeting, my voice so soft. Sometimes I wake up and forget she's gone just for a moment. Rachel, who lost her husband 3 years ago, gently squeezed my hand. That's normal, buddy. Grief ebbs and flows, she said kindly. As time went by I had to handle other matters. Amanda had ensured I would be secure financially. We had a house in the suburbs, an apartment in the city, and a good sum in the bank. I could have quit my job at the marketing firm, but the thought of staying home all day alone frightened me, so I chose to work part-time. Just enough to keep busy. The biggest shock was how my relationship with my parents shifted. Growing up I always felt they cared more about my younger brother Tim. They never missed his baseball games or school recitals, while my report cards barely got a nod. But after Amanda died, something changed between us. I offered to help my parents by sending them $3,000 every month. I didn't hesitate. Our weekly dinners at their place had become something I looked forward to. Mom would make her famous pot roast. Dad would pour a little wine, and we'd chat about all kinds of things. For the first time in my life I felt truly seen. Jason, tell us more about that new project you're handling, Dad would ask, actually taking an interest in my work. For once the marketing campaign was thriving. I'd reply, enjoying the feeling of being noticed. My boss thinks it might attract a few new clients. But everything changed the night my sister Laura came over for dinner. She entered, 8 months pregnant, and just like always, the entire room turned its attention to her. Laura had been living in a cramped apartment on the other side of town. I hadn't seen her since Amanda's funeral. Laura dear, sit here, Mom said, rushing over and gently pushing me aside to make room for her favorite sibling. Do you need another pillow? Are your feet swollen? Just like that I faded into the background again. It was like I became invisible. Their focus was solely on Laura and her pregnancy. That old feeling of being overlooked returned, and it stung. I thought I had moved past it, but it came back so fast. So who's the father? I asked during dinner, trying to join the conversation. Have you mentioned it to him? Laura's expression shifted. She looked annoyed. That's my business, she snapped while pushing food around on her plate. I don't need to share my private life, Mom quickly defended her. Jason, don't ask questions. Your sibling doesn't owe anyone an explanation. I couldn't help but notice how different that was from when they treated me while I was struggling with fertility treatments, trying to have a child. They always bombarded me with questions, offered unwanted advice, and demanded constant updates. But with Tim they respected his privacy without a second thought. Later during another dinner I asked again, but how are you going to manage everything on your own? Babies are expensive. Laura waved her hand like it was nothing. That familiar smug smile crept across her face. Don't worry about me or my baby, we won't need help from anyone, she declared confidently. I should have paid more heed to that smile. I'd seen it far too often before. Laura always started new ventures only for them to collapse. Soon after there was the juice bar business that lasted 3 weeks, the life coach course she never completed, and that time she lost 4 months' rent on a crypto trust investment, she said, patting her baby bump with a look of assurance that should have warned me. This time everything is going to unfold just as I planned. Dad looked at her, as if she'd discovered the cure to a major illness. That's my kid, he said proudly. She always finds a way to land on her feet. I took another bite of pot roast, trying to swallow the familiar sting of being second best. Some things never change, I thought as I watched my parents hang on every word Laura spoke. The call from Laura Came on a Friday morning. I was at my desk reviewing some marketing reports when my phone lit up with her name. I almost didn't answer it. Our chats were usually brief and a bit awkward, but something made me pick up this time. "Jason," she said in that overly sweet tone she reserved only for when she needed something, "I'm having my baby shower next weekend at Mom and Dad's. I'd really love it if you could come." I wasn't expecting that. The last genuine conversation we had was at Amanda's funeral, and even then she seemed distracted and uneasy. "Are you sure?" I asked, unable to hide my surprise. I could count on one hand the times Laura had ever invited me anywhere. "Of course," she laughed. "Though it didn't sound sincere. You're my only sister. It wouldn't feel right without you. Plus, I have something special planned." Something in her tone twisted my stomach, but I pushed away the feeling. "I'll be there," I said, already planning gift ideas. Maybe this was her attempt to mend things between us. The next Sunday I arrived at my parents' house carrying 2 neatly wrapped gifts, a sleek baby monitor, and a handmade baby blanket. Even though Laura and I hadn't always seen eye to eye, this was still my future nephew or niece. The house looked like it had been hit by a pastel storm. Pink and blue balloons were everywhere. Streamers hung on every wall, and in the center stood a giant diaper cake decorated as if it were for an upscale party. Trust Laura to throw a grand affair. Half the town seemed to be there. Aunt Carolyn was chatting with her daughters. Mom's bridge club friends had taken over the sofa, and Laura's old college roommate lingered by the punch bowl giggling over old tales. "Time for games," Laura announced, walking through the crowd in a gorgeous maternity dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked stunning, but something about her smile made me uneasy. Her eyes locked with mine from across the room, holding my gaze a bit too long. We played all the classic baby shower games, guessing her due date, measuring her bump with string, and a silly game with melted chocolate bars and diapers. I ended up winning the bump measurement game, and Laura didn't seem pleased about it. Throughout the party she kept watching me in an odd way, as if waiting for something. After the gift opening began, she made a spectacle of reacting to every little baby item. Each onesie and gadget got more applause than the last. Then she reached for my gifts. She held up the blanket and softly traced the pattern with her fingers. After a pause she tapped her glass for attention. The room hushed. My heart suddenly pounded, and I couldn't explain why. The air felt thick, like something big was about to occur. It was getting hard to breathe. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," Laura started, one hand resting on her swollen belly. "But there's something else I must announce. I think it's time everyone hears who the mother of my baby is." My heart raced. Laura stared right at me, and in that moment I already sensed the truth, though knowing didn't ease the pain. "The mother," she declared loudly, her voice resonating through the now silent room, "is Amanda Chastain, Jason's late wife." The world spun around me amid gasps and whispers. Aunt Carolyn covered her mouth in shock. Laura's college friends gathered together, whispering quickly, but what hurt me the most was the calm on my parents' faces. They weren't surprised. They had already known before I could grasp what was happening. Laura continued with pride as she turned to face me, "Since this baby is Amanda's only child, I am entitled to half of everything she left behind. That means the house, the apartment, the funds my child deserves. Their mother's inheritance." Everything spun out of control. I grabbed a chair to steady myself from falling. Then my mom and dad stepped forward and stood by Laura as if shielding her. "Jason," Dad said in a firm tone, "you must do what's right. Your nephew deserves what belongs to him." Somehow I found my voice rough and dry. "You're lying. All of you are lying. Amanda would never do this." Laura's smile shifted, turning cold and bitter. She pulled out her phone. "Then how do you explain this?" she asked, displaying the screen, and my world shattered again. There they were, Amanda and Laura in each other's arms, kissing in what seemed like a hotel room. Another photo showed them holding hands at a restaurant I didn't recognize. She claimed he loved her. Laura shouted loud enough for everyone to hear, "She was planning to leave you for me." We intended to reveal it all. Then she stopped, tears streaming down her face. "But then the accident happened, and all our plans vanished." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My body moved on its own. I clutched my bag, pushed past the shocked guests, and stumbled to my car. I heard Mom calling after me, but I was already backing out. The drive home was a haze, my mind replaying those images again and again, trying to understand. The photos at the restaurant must have been during those business dinners Amanda always mentioned. The hotel, likely one of the work trips she cited. My phone buzzed as soon as I stepped inside, Laura firing off message after message. Dozens of screenshots of her chats with Amanda. "I don't love her anymore. I haven't for a long time. Will tell everyone after the divorce. You're the only one I want." I couldn't stop them. They felt like fresh wounds with each ping. The dates on the messages revealed their chats spanned months. All this time while I suffered through grueling fertility treatments. blaming myself for our childlessness. My wife and my sister were crafting a new life without me. That night I couldn't sit still, I roamed my house touching Amanda's things, scanning photos on the walls, wondering if any of it had been real. Had our whole life together been a lie? At 6 a.m. sharp my phone rang again. It was my parents. I let it ring a few times before answering. Jason, you must be reasonable about this, Dad said. Not even a greeting. The sooner you agree to give Laura her share of the inheritance, the simpler it will be for all. His cold, measured tone enraged me. Easier for who? For Laura, for them, for everyone, Mom added. I realized they had me on speakerphone. You don't want this to escalate, dear? I barely managed to ask. When did you learn about them? There was a silence, a pause that said more than words. Then Mom finally spoke. We've known for a while. Amanda mentioned about 7 months before the accident. Her words hit me like a blow. 7 months they knew, and during that time they let me grieve at Amanda's funeral. While they pretended to console me, they kept taking the money I sent monthly if they needed funds. They could ask dear Laura. 3 weeks passed filled with missed calls and ignored messages. Then I received an email from Laura. She said she'd sue me if I didn't hand over half of everything Amanda left behind. She used the word voluntarily, but it rang more as a threat. I couldn't reply. I couldn't even face Amanda's betrayal or count the number of people who must have seen them together while I was kept in the dark. Work worsened too. The whispers started, some coworkers giving me sad looks while others tried hiding their smirks. I sensed them talking behind my back. Then Larry, my boss and one of the few true friends I had left, called me in for a meeting in the middle of a client session. I broke down. Larry looked at me kindly and said, take some time off, paid or unpaid, whatever works for you. Your job will be waiting when you return. I nodded gratefully, gathered my things that same day. The following weeks were a blur. I hardly left home, had groceries delivered, ignored knocks on my door, and spent hours poring over old photos trying to detect what I had missed. Every happy memory now felt tainted, every moment of our marriage ruined by the truth that my wife had been secretly unfaithful with my own sister. Then I discovered on Facebook that Laura had given birth to a baby boy. A photo showed her smiling in a hospital bed, our parents standing proudly beside her new grandson, the baby wrapped in the cream-colored blanket I had made for her baby shower. It struck me like a blow. I quickly closed the app, but not before I saw the baby's name, Jason Jr. A week later, a thick envelope arrived, my hands trembling as I opened it. I already suspected it was a court notice. Laura was suing me for half of everything Amanda had left her, claiming her son deserved his mother's legacy. The legal letter was stark and unyielding. She wanted the house, half the money, and a stake in the downtown apartment. I spent 4 days searching for the right lawyer before choosing Paul Heyman. He had a sterling reputation for handling tough inheritance battles. Mr. Chastain, he said while leafing through papers on his desk, his face composed but serious. I have to be frank, your sister holds strong evidence that she and your wife shared a long-term relationship. There are texts, photos, even witness statements, including from your parents. He paused, adjusting his glasses. In cases like this, proof of a close bond and a biological child usually sways the court to favor the child's side. I was still reeling from this dreadful revelation when my phone rang that evening. It was an unknown number. Hello, I answered. Is this Jason Chastain? A woman's voice inquired. I didn't recognize it, but something in her tone felt strangely familiar. I'm Joyce Meyer, Amanda's mother. The world wavered. I gripped the kitchen counter for balance. That's impossible, I whispered. Amanda told me she was an orphan. She said her parents died when she was young, that she grew up in foster care. I'm sorry, that was another lie, she said bitterly. Would you meet me? There are things you need to know, things that might help us. We agreed to meet the next morning at a small downtown cafe, a neutral spot. I arrived early, stomach in knots. I ordered a coffee but could barely sip it, my hands trembling so much I nearly dropped the cup when she entered. She looked just like Amanda. Her eyes, her smile, even the graceful way she moved reminded me of her. I recalled the funeral she attended after we'd grown apart, too lost in grief to really notice her then, but now the memory was vivid. The elegant woman in black, apart from the crowd, face hidden behind a dark veil. Why are you telling me all this now? I asked, trying to stay composed after everything I'd learned about Amanda. It was hard to trust anyone who had been close to her. Joyce reached into her bag and pulled out a worn manila envelope, its edges creased as if it had traveled a long road. Because I heard what your sister is attempting to do, she said, and even after all that has happened, I don't want another person to suffer because of my wife's lies. Her fingers trembled as she slid the envelope toward me. I opened it slowly, my hands quivering. Inside were medical records from Hartford General Hospital dated 11 years ago. Just a year before Amanda and I married. As I read the paper, I felt the color drain from my face. Complete azoospermia, permanently sterile, no chance for natural conception. The harsh medical terms hit me like blows. Amanda had taken this test when she was 26. She was devastated by the results. Joyce said quietly. It was one of the last things we ever discussed before our silence fell. I couldn't utter a word after all those years of trying to have a child. Endless doctor visits, hormone shots, tears and self-blame. It had all been a cruel deception. Amanda had known she couldn't conceive but never told me. When the court day finally arrived, the room was packed. Laura sat in the front row, gently cradling baby Jason Jr. Our parents stood by her side, looking proud and protective. She was dressed like the ideal grieving woman: simple black suit, minimal makeup, and a practiced sorrowful expression. When she took the stand, she played her part flawlessly, eyes glistening with tears as she spoke of her deep love for Amanda. "All I want is what's fair for my son," she said, voice trembling. "He deserves his mother's legacy." My lawyer, Mr. Heyman, remained calm and waited until she finished before speaking. "Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that Miss Ramsey's entire claim is false," he began, handing documents to the judge, who reviewed the records with a stoic expression. Laura's lawyer quickly objected about the source and authenticity of the documents. Laura's composed demeanor finally broke. She cried, "These papers are fake," she yelled, clutching the baby tightly. "They were forged to steal my nephew's inheritance." But Mr. Heyman maintained his calm. "Your Honor," he said, "these records show that Mrs. Chastain was unable to have children, so we request a DNA test to determine the true mother." Laura grinned as if victorious. "That's impossible," she argued. "Amanda was an orphan and her body was cremated. There's no one to test." Mr. Heyman replied, turning to the audience, "I'd like to call Joyce Meyer, Amanda Chastain's biological mother." Joyce stood, and a ripple of astonishment spread through the courtroom. Even from my seat I could see Laura's face. "Blanche, I'm willing to take a DNA test," Joyce stated clearly, "to verify if this child is truly my grandson." The judge nodded. "A DNA test is ordered. We shall reconvene once the results are in." Laura looked as if she might faint. Her skin went pale, and she slumped in her seat. Our mother rushed to support her, casting a resentful glance at me. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a glimmer of hope. The courtroom fell silent as the judge opened an envelope containing the DNA test results. The judge announced in a measured tone, "The results show no genetic link between the child and Mrs. Joyce Meyer, meaning Amanda Chastain is not the mother of this child." The room erupted in gasps. Laura's face crumpled and tears streamed down her cheeks, her mascara smearing. "Miss Ramsey," the judge said in a stern voice, "do you care to explain why you lied to this court?" Laura clutched the baby tighter, her voice barely audible. "I was seeing more than one person at the time when Amanda died and was cremated. I thought no one would ever learn she had wealth and I needed it, so you tried to deceive your own brother." The judge pressed sharply. "You even exploited your parents to cover this deceit." "I just wanted my child to have a good life," Laura whispered, but this time her act failed. Even our parents appeared shocked. Finally, grasping the extent of her betrayal, the judge delivered his ruling immediately. "This court rules in favor of the defendant, Jason Chastain. All of Laura Ramsey's claims to the estate are permanently dismissed." "Miss Ramsey, you're fortunate Mr. Chastain has not pursued charges for attempted fraud." Outside the courthouse afterwards, my parents approached me. Mom were in tears and Dad looked more worn than I'd ever seen him. I had never seen Dad look so old. "Jason dear," Mom said, reaching for my hand, "we never realized Laura was lying. We only wanted to fix things since you stopped sending the monthly money." I held up my hand to protest. Just don't." Then I took out my phone, blocked their numbers right there in front of them, and walked away without looking back. Joyce was waiting by my car. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. To my own surprise I laughed. "You know what I think I am, or I will be." I took a deep breath. I'd been mulling over that downtown apartment Amanda left me. I never really liked it. Too many memories, but maybe you'd like it. Her eyes widened. "Jason, no, I couldn't please," I said firmly. "You gave me my life back with those medical records. Let me give you something in return." A week later I handed her the keys. She began crying and hugged me tightly. "I never imagined I'd have a brother who cared so deeply," she whispered. "That was 4 months ago. My old family still tries to reach me through distant relatives and mutual friends, but I've cut those ties too." Laura even sent a letter apologizing that she had changed and needed help with the baby. I tossed it aside without reading it. Instead, I now have weekly dinners with Joyce. We're slowly getting to know each other, sharing stories about Amanda, the good and the bad. She's helping me accept that even though Amanda wasn't the woman I thought she was, it doesn't erase all our happy times. Yesterday I finally packed up the last of Amanda's belongings. Joyce helped me donate some to charity, and stored the rest while we worked together. She shared stories about Amanda as a little girl before all the lies started. Somehow it made it easier to believe that a true part of her once existed. I'm not ready to date yet, but I've started living my life again. I've gone back to work full-time, joined a hiking club, and I'm even planning my first solo vacation. Sometimes when I look in the mirror I barely recognize the man staring back at me. Life sure does have a funny way of surprising you. I lost the family I was born into, but I found a new one I never expected. It's not the life I planned, but maybe it's the life I was meant to have all along.